Welcome back to Exercise Science News. I'm Rachel Roberts.
And I'm Robert Rachels. On today's segment, Nutrition Now, we're talking about energy deficiency syndrome, commonly known as REDS. Recently, head coach of the Nike Oregon project, Alberto Salazar, was accused of possessing and trafficking testosterone and was later suspended amidst the doping scandal that surfaced earlier this fall. Last week, new allegations about Salazar were brought to light when the New York Times released detailed accounts of abuse and gender discrimination from former Oregon Project runners Mary Kane and Amy Yoder-Bagley. In the viral video posted by the New York Times, Kane states that under Nike and the coaching of Salazar, young girls' bodies are being ruined by an emotionally and physically abusive system.
Both athletes claim that Salazar strongly encouraged them to lose weight and publicly shamed them if they did not reach weight loss goals. Periods of extreme caloric restriction and dieting caused many health and performance-related deficits for both of these athletes. Kane expressed that during this time she lost her menstrual cycle, broke 5 bones, engaged in self-harm, and experienced suicidal thoughts. This was accompanied by a decline in running performance.
Kane and Bagley's personal stories of mistreatment by the Nike Oregon Project highlight the widespread issues of REDS among athletes. The syndrome, characterized by impaired physiological processes due to insufficient nutrient intake, is associated with decreases in metabolic rate, irregular or absent menstrual cycles, declining bone health, decreased protein synthesis, and impaired immunity and cardiovascular health.
Let's join interviewer Ivy Ingram to hear from an expert on REDS.
We have Nathan Nile here with us, a sports nutritionist and clinical sports psychologist who works with the cross-country and track field teams of Brooks Training Academy to talk to us today about the dangers of REDS. So Nathan, what are your opinions on the Nike Oregon training program?
Yeah, so Ivy, I'm sure that you, as well as many of your viewers here, have already seen this controversial video. And it brings to light many topics. For instance, misconceptions of what being healthy and fit actually are, as well as misinformed authorities and role models who are supposed to be guiding and supporting these adolescent athletic individuals. Personally, I think that health should always be at the forefront, a strong foundation on which performance can then be built upon. But in regards to REDS, it's one of these more recently recognized health conditions in the field, amongst, of course, the athletic population in particular. Prior, it was originally referred to as the female athlete triad, but has evolved to be inclusive for both males and females, as well as athletes and non-athletes. So understanding the prevalence of how many people it actually impacts is a little bit hard to get numbers on right now.
Okay, so what exactly is REDS and how does it present within an adolescent individual?
Yeah, so REDS is typically starting out with a caloric restriction that can stem from any type of eating disorder. And this is most typically seen in sports that rely on weight classes. So whether it be football, wrestling, even rowing, or on the other end, sports that glamorize aesthetics like dance and gymnastics can also heavily contribute to this. But as far as if you're a concerned individual that you might have some of these signs and symptoms, what to be on the lookout for would definitely be brittle hair and nails, a developing sensitivity to cold weather, a lowered heart rate and blood pressure, heart irregularities such as chest pain, significant weight loss, of course, particularly for females, any missed or irregular periods, fatigue and inability to focus in class, stress fractures without any significant signs of injury, and of course any type of eating disorder.
Okay, that's some great information. So can these athletes ultimately recover from REDS, and if so, how?
Yes, they most certainly can recover from REDS. It's typically focused on achieving that optimal nutrition intake while also promoting, of course, healthy eating behaviors and treating any of the underlying psychological issues that had stemmed from this eating disorder that they might have. Personally, most of the successful treatment plans that I've seen in action have what's called a team-based approach, which typically includes a physician, nutritionist, coach, psychologist, and family members collaborating to make sure that this individual gets exactly what they need in order to recover.
Okay, so what would you recommend for a daily macronutrient intake for these individuals?
So for those who are recovering from REDS and have history with any type of eating disorder, I would definitely recommend slowly increasing their levels of macronutrients back into their diet. But otherwisely, I would say to start out with doing the daily recommended intake for your macronutrients. So for instance, protein is going to be 1.4 grams per kg of body weight, carbs is going to be 8 grams per kg for body weight, and then of course 20 to 30% of the daily caloric intake should primarily be focused on fats.
Okay, that's some great information. So are there any special vitamins and minerals these athletes should be incorporating into their daily nutrition?
Yeah, definitely. So typically we see individuals who need to increase their vitamin D3 or calcium levels in order to build and maintain their bone health. So particularly within the adolescent population, this is the most crucial, seeing as how they're in this phase of bone development, whereas as an adult, that phase no longer occurs. So whatever they build as a younger individual will carry on hopefully into their adulthood.
Okay, so I know that nutrient timing is very important, especially for endurance runners. Do you have any recommendations for adolescent athletes to incorporate that into their training?
Yeah, most certainly. So for carbohydrates, it's definitely going to be important for endurance runners, particularly prior to their event, so making sure that their glycogen stores are saturated, as well as probably having a low fiber and fat but high in carbohydrate meal approximately 3 hours before their race event in order to make sure that they have sufficient glycogen stores and energy to perform. Additionally, it's even okay for athletes to have a carbohydrate snack either right before or even during their event to make sure that they're still fueling their bodies in order to perform. But of course, every individual is different, so I would highly recommend that they try it out different ways. Of course, not on actual performance day, but in practices or on their off days in order to make sure that they're performing at their optimal.
Okay, very nice. So do you have any last minute thoughts that you want to share with our viewers?
Yeah, so one more thing. In regards to post-exercise, I would highly recommend that those individuals actually focus more on carbohydrate and protein intake in order to restore their glycogen as well as protein stores that were utilized during their event. But as far as any pressing last-minute thoughts, I would definitely suggest and recommend that all individuals be well-informed and be aware, especially as more research and information is coming about this relatively new condition pertaining to athletes. And then lastly, of course, listening to your body is key. So in regards to the athletic individual who was with Nike, she knew that something was wrong with her body, however, her coaches were telling her otherwise. So making sure that you stand up for yourself, advocate, and get the help that you need, and consulting with your personal physician or family caretaker, I would definitely would recommend that to be the most important.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Nathan, for your time, and back to you, Rachel and Robert, in the studio. Guys, we're live!
Wow, what a great interview. Thanks for all that information.
Well, we'll see you next week on ESS News, where the real science happens.